So can you give a definition of what is forensic speak?
Yes. So forensic speak is basically, how do you speak forensics? There is an authenticity to the language of DNA, crime scene investigation, death investigation, what happens in a courtroom, fingerprint investigation. There's a whole language to that. And so not just the science behind it, the book is about the science behind it, but it's also like, what does it mean? So I break it down into sections, chapters that breaks all the like fingerprint science, DNA science. How do you investigate a crime scene? What is a buccal swab? What is mitochondrial DNA? And how can you use it in your writing or in your content creating?
It's funny because I actually remember very vividly when I first got to LA almost over a decade ago. I went to the California Science Museum, and they had a CSI exhibit.
Cool.
At there, like from the show.
Cool.
And I got to walk in, and we go through 3 murder scenes, and so and literally you go in and start playing the game of like, what's the blood splatter? How is blood splatter actually done? Like, how does it really? How do you, by the blood splatter, you can tell if how the body was hit or how the injury happened. You probably can explain blood splatters much better than I can, but it was kind of so fascinating to go in through all of that. And there was an autopsy table. It was like insane stuff. So It was, I know you're like, what? I want to go.
I had one too. I did. We literally did have an autopsy table.
So just like for perfect example, like blood splatter, something as simple as blood splatter. How can blood splatter really determine how somebody might have died, or the kind of injury or things like that? What can you get from that? So let's dive into that.
Okay, so I actually have a whole section on, and I'm going to have to correct you. It's not splatter, it's spatter.
There you go. You see, that's why you're on the show.
Now, right. So the spatter is the thing. Okay, so the splatter is, it's semantics. It's really semantics. So
Sure.
The splatter is kind of what happens,
right?
But the spatter is the image that it makes, or the pattern that it makes. So it is really fascinating because things like the spatter, when a blood drops, it drops at a certain velocity. So if it's a low velocity, you can tell from the way they have tails, they have bodies and tails. And so from the tail points you in the direction of where the person was going when the hit happened, or when the injury happened. And then whether it's low, medium, or high velocity impact. So like a low velocity is going to be somebody bludgeoning you with a hammer or a crowbar. A high velocity is going to be gunshot wound. And so the spatter is going to look different. It's going to, it's just going to look different depending on what kind of velocity. And so that alone can tell you a lot about how an incident happened, where an incident happened. There's this thing called arterial wave pattern in blood spatter. So if a person is still living and they're moving, like say they get hit, they get injured, they get shot, and it's in an artery, but they're still trying to get away or move, because the heart is beating, the blood is coming out in that rhythm. And so and it creates this wave pattern. So like I've seen pictures where you can see it like on the wall, a wave of blood. And so that person was living while they were trying to travel. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. I'm fascinated.